Welcome to a new episode about mythical creatures. In the last episode, we took a detailed look at demons in general and the demons of death in particular. Today's second part focuses on other demons we also know about. Since time immemorial, humans have been preoccupied with the unknown. Demons have been a means of making the inexplicable tangible. Today we are turning our attention to those demons that haunt us in other areas of life. Demons of temptation, illness, the forces of nature, revenge, and possession. These supernatural figures are rooted in ancient myths and legends and often reflect people's innermost fears and desires. In this episode, we'll hear exciting stories, learn about personal encounters and mythical tales, and also take a look at scientific explanations that reveal how our brains react in stressful situations. Then we have the demons of temptation. They appear as seducers in the shadows. Demons of temptation appear even in the oldest writings. One of the most well-known figures is Asmodeus, who is considered the epitome of lustful desire in Jewish and Christian legends. It is said that Asmodeus reveals people's deepest desires in moments of weakness and tempts them to cross moral boundaries. An ancient legend tells of a wise man who lived in a small village. He was known for his steadfastness and unshakable moral principles. One night, a dark figure appeared to him in a dream, shadowy and seductive, and promised to fulfill all his most secret desires. The figure whispered of immeasurable wealth, passionate love, and boundless freedom. At first, the wise man tried to resist this temptation, but soon he sensed changes in his environment. Friends were falling into debaucherous vices, and he himself felt the sweet sound of seduction penetrating his heart. Only when he realized that his apparition was not a mere dream, but a demon of temptation, was he able to resist it. Modern psychologists often explain such experiences with cognitive distortions. In times of great stress or inner turmoil, our subconscious seeks simple explanations. Thus, the inner conflict between rational action and impulsive desires is personified in the form of an external being, the demon of temptation. The renowned psychologist Carl Gustav Jung spoke of archetypes, universal symbols deeply anchored in our collective unconscious. In this light, the demon of temptation is not just a mythical figure, but also a reflection of our inner ambivalence. Another story tells of a young woman who was walking alone on a warm summer evening. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared, smiling at her and inviting her into a dark alley, a place that seemed mysterious and seductive. The young woman sensed something was wrong, but at the same time she felt irresistibly drawn. Only when she felt the cold wind blowing through the alley and the street lights flickering ominously did she realize she was being tempted. She fled, but this encounter changed her life. She learned to critically examine her inner desires and not to be blinded by superficial temptations. Then we also know demons of illness, shadows that infest the body. In ancient times, when illnesses often seemed incomprehensible, people resorted to belief in demons to explain the inexplicable. Stories of demons believed to be the cause of epidemics and diseases emerged, especially in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Mesopotamian texts frequently mention Alu, a demonic being that supposedly spreads disease and attacks the body. A striking story comes from a small Egyptian village in which a woman suddenly became seriously ill. No one in the village could explain why she became so weak and her strength was waning. The villagers believed that a demonic influence, an invisible enemy, was prowling through her house at night and stealing her life energy. An experienced shaman was summoned who attempted to banish this demon in a lengthy ritual using herbs. incense and secret chants. Although the woman eventually died of the illness, her story remained a warning. An inexplicable evil can afflict people, and special rituals are needed to protect themselves from this invisible enemy. Scientifically speaking, such reports can often be explained today by psychosomatic reactions. In times of extreme fear or great stress, the body can react to stress with physical symptoms. Sleep paralysis or hallucinations associated with grief or loss can also lead people to believe they are being attacked by a demonic entity. Nevertheless, these ancient stories have retained their fascination to this day and continue to shape rituals and protective measures against illness in many cultures. Added to this are the demons of the forces of nature. They represent the untamed power of the elements. Nature can be as beautiful as it is terrifying. In many cultures, natural disasters such as storms, floods, or earthquakes were not understood as random events, but as the work of supernatural forces. In the Arab world and parts of Africa and Asia, people speak of jinn, spirits who can control the weather. An ancient story tells of a caravan in the desert that was suddenly surprised by a violent sandstorm. The travelers said they saw a dark, shadowy figure on the horizon that summoned the storm. This apparition was interpreted as the demon of the forces of nature, a being angry about the world's imbalance and seeking to destroy and demonstrate its power. The story quickly spread and became a legend, reminding people that they must always live in awe of the unpredictable forces of nature. From a modern perspective, meteorologists explain such phenomena by sudden atmospheric changes that cause differences in temperature and pressure. However, the emotional experience of a violent storm, combined with the feeling of being overwhelmed by something greater, creates room for mythical explanations. Ancient stories show that when people felt unable to cope with the power of nature, they personified these forces in the form of demons in order to find meaning in the chaos. Also known are demons of revenge. These deal with unresolved debts and eternal resentment. Revenge is a powerful and often destructive emotion. Many legends feature demons born from unrequited revenge. In Japanese folklore, these are the onryo spirits that arise from deep resentment and make life difficult for the living. A famous story tells of a young woman who was abandoned and betrayed by her lover. Her pain and anger were so great that she found no peace in her heart. As a result, villagers reported that a ghostly figure stalked the streets at night, the apparition of the rejected woman seeking revenge on those who had wronged her. These onryo were described as malevolent beings who brought misfortune upon entire families. Tales of vengeful spirits can also be found in European legends. In old family feuds, it was not uncommon for the spirit of a deceased relative to return to claim the debts of the living. The stories warn that unresolved conflicts and deep-seated resentment can become, of course, a curse that lasts for generations. The symbolism of these demons of vengeance teaches us that forgiveness and reconciliation are not only morally important, but also ensure inner peace. From a psychological perspective, revenge is often understood as a projection of our own inner turmoil. When people carry unresolved conflicts within themselves, they can perceive them as an external demon, a force that continually haunts and controls them. In this sense, the demon of vengeance is a symbol of the endless cycle of pain and retribution that we must break to find peace. Finally, the demons of possession. They often signify a loss of control. Possession describes the state in which someone feels overwhelmed by an alien force. Many cultures contain stories in which people report being haunted or even controlled by a dark presence. A frequently mentioned name in this context is Asmodeus, who, while also associated with temptation, frequently appears as the one who plunges people into a state of uncontrollable desire and obsession. A gripping story tells of a man who was suddenly plagued by intrusive, obsessive thoughts in his everyday life. He felt as if someone wanted to make his decisions for him, as if an invisible force was urging him to take certain actions, actions he would never otherwise have considered. His family and friends noticed a change. The man became increasingly withdrawn and lost touch with reality. He reported visions in which a dark, eerie figure with glowing eyes watched him. He eventually sought help from a therapist who explained to him that such experiences can occur in some people as a kind of inner possession brought on by stress, deep personal conflicts, and sometimes even neurological causes. The legend that the demon of possession, in the form of a supernatural power, can completely control humans has persisted over the centuries and reflects the inner struggle between reason and impulsive urges. Scientific perspectives and modern explanations. Modern scientists have attempted to demystify ancient legends about demons without denying the cultural and psychological value of these narratives. For example, the phenomenon of sleep paralysis is often explained by visions of dark figures. During these states in which the body is asleep and the brain is partially awake, hallucinations can occur that are interpreted as demonic apparitions. These explanations show that in extreme situations, our brain sometimes draws on ancient, deeply rooted archetypes, symbols anchored in our collective psyche, as described by Carl Gustav Jung. Even during periods of intense emotional stress, such as bereavement or serious personal crisis, people can feel accompanied by an eerie presence. These perceptions are often subjective and reinforced by cultural influences. While modern medicine and psychology often provide rational explanations, the symbolic value of these demons remains undisputed. They provide a mirror in which we can recognize our deepest fears and desires, be it the fear of losing control, of terminal illness, or of the inescapable wrath of past hurts. Another interesting scientific approach is the study of so-called hallucinations during extreme fatigue or trance states. Research shows that people in these states often perceive shadows, shadowy figures, or even detailed visions that bear striking similarities to ancient depictions of demons. These findings suggest that the stories we tell about demons are deeply rooted in human nature, an attempt to explain the unknown and uncontrollable. Anecdotes and encounter stories. Let me share some fascinating stories that have been passed down through the centuries. A Middle Eastern legend tells of a merchant traveling in a lonely desert town. One night, as the wind rose and the sand flew in wild swirls, the villagers claimed to have seen a dark figure on the horizon. This figure, they said, seemed to be summoning the storm. The merchant, initially seized by fear, gathered his courage and turned to an old village sage. The sage explained to him that it was a demon of the forces of nature, a being that embodied the unpredictable powers of the desert. The merchant left the village the next morning, but the encounter remained with him as a reminder never to underestimate the power of nature. Another story that circulated in a small European village tells of a young woman who was repeatedly haunted in her dreams by a seductive figure. This apparition promised to fulfill all her deepest desires, but each time the dream ended in a feeling of emptiness and pain. Over time, she realized she was being pursued by a demon of temptation, a being that sought to steer her away from her own path in life. The woman sought counsel from an ancient healer who helped her understand the symbolic meaning of the dreams and mobilize her inner strength to resist the temptation. Her story was passed on the community and served as a warning to avoid the tempting but dangerous path of temptation. A third example comes from the Middle Ages, when a man suffering from a serious illness had supernatural visions. He reported that, as he lay dying, he was haunted by a dark, cold presence that seemed to drain his life force. Doctors could find no rational explanation for his symptoms, and in his despair he sought refuge in ancient rituals. With the help of a shaman, he was able to reclaim his inner strength in these final days. Although he ultimately died, his experience left his fellow human beings with the impression that the demon of illness, however elusive it seemed, can be conquered if one becomes aware of one's own strength. Modern accounts of crisis situations also recall these ancient legends. In times of great grief or psychological crisis, some people report a kind of inner possession in which they feel controlled by a strange dark force. Such experiences are often interpreted as encounters with a demon of possession. These accounts demonstrate that the boundary between reality and inner perception is fluid and that the ancient myths still resonate in our dreams and memories. In summary, demons of temptations, illness, natural forces, revenge, and possession are deeply rooted in human history. They once served as explanations for the unexplainable, whether it was the unexpected power of a sandstorm, the sinister influence of an illness, or the inner struggles raging within us. These demons are more than just scary figures. They are symbols of life's challenges, temptations that challenge our moral actions, and the uncontrollable forces that sometimes overwhelm us. Scientific research has shown that many of the ancient reports of demonic appearances, whether in moments of extreme fear, sleep paralysis, or intense grief, are actually the result of neurological and psychological phenomena. Our brains are programmed to recognize patterns in stressful situations, sometimes so strongly that they can make us see dark figures deeply embedded in our collective unconscious. These insights offer us a fascinating glimpse into how ancient myths and modern science converge. The demons, once considered real beings, are now symbols of human experiences that we can better understand and treat with the help of modern therapies. The stories of encounters with these demons also teach us that even in the darkest moments lies an opportunity for insight. Whether it was the old sage who resisted the seductive voices of temptation or the young woman who learned to resist the sinister influence of resentment, each of these stories reminds us that we are not powerless. We can recognize and understand our inner demons and, if not always completely defeat them, at least integrate them into our lives and thus grow. The fascination with these demons continues today because they help us reflect on the human condition. They show us how closely joy and pain, light and darkness are connected. They challenge us to face our fears, but also to find the courage to move on, even with the shadows of the past sometimes catch up with us. That's it for today. I can't say much more about demons. As always, no guarantee of accuracy or completeness. I hope you enjoyed the stories about the demons of death and the demons in general. If you want to learn more about the fascinating world of fairy tales and legends, stay tuned and don't miss our next episodes. Until next time, stay curious and see you soon. All the best.